In the previous episode, Li Shulai, after reading Liao Kixin's short story, enthusiastically told her, "This must be published immediately," thinking to himself, she will surely be more famous than in her previous life, and finally escape her suffering. I've finally helped another person. Liao Kixin, flustered by his praise, quickly pulled her hands back and said, "What you said makes me feel so embarrassed." Up next, Li Shulai, reflecting on his own excitement, thought, "I was so moved just now that I couldn't help but act out of the ordinary. I wonder if my idol will mind." Liao Kixin, still slightly embarrassed, said, "I've selected 3 publishing houses, but I'm not sure which one would be the best fit for my manuscript. After all, submitting the same manuscript to multiple publishers isn't ideal. Could you help me decide?" She handed him a piece of paper, adding, "I've listed their pros and cons. Please take a look." Li Shulai took the paper and examined it carefully. The listed publishers were Hangzhou Literature, Westlake Monthly, and Hangzhou Small Magazine. Upon seeing Hangzhou Small Magazine on the list, he suddenly remembered, although Hangzhou Small Magazine isn't well known now, it will develop into the top publishing house in Hangzhou, and even the south, within 5 years. He looked up and told Liao Kixin, "I think all of these are good, but personally, I'm more optimistic about Hangzhou Small Magazine. It might be selfish, but I prefer their selections." Liao Kixin smiled brightly and said, "Okay, then let's go with Hangzhou Small Magazine." Li Shulai, surprised by her quick decision, asked, "Don't you even want to know why I chose it over Hangzhou Literature?" Blushing, Liao Kixin replied, "I trust your vision and choices. Your suggestions have always been helpful to me." On the other side of the restaurant, Xiaoning, clearly upset, told her friend, "Let's go after we eat." Her friend glanced at her and thought, she hasn't even touched her food, and now she's saying she's on a diet? She's so angry she can't even eat properly. Xiaoning stood up, pushing her plate away, and said, "I'll just lose weight." She stormed past Li Shulai and Liao Kixin, visibly angry and embarrassed. Her friend, trying to hide her amusement, thought, "I never imagined I'd see the young lady chasing her husband to the crematorium with my own eyes. This is so exciting." Li Shulai noticed Xiaoning's frustration and wondered, what's she so angry about this time? Liao Kixin, noticing his distracted look, asked, "What's wrong?" Li Shulai shrugged. "It's nothing. Some people aren't important enough to worry about." However, Xiaoning overheard his words and clenched her fists in fury. "Am I really just an insignificant person to him? I'm his niece. How dare he say that? At the library." Later, Li Shulai accompanied Zhang Ming to the library to help him with his graduation thesis. As they entered, Zhang Ming eagerly said, "Brother Shu, come, sit here, please." Li Shulai rolled his eyes. "Stop with the nonsense. Let me find you a couple of reference books first." He walked to the library shelves and picked up some books. As he browsed, he noticed a familiar figure, a white-haired girl, reading on the other side of the shelves. Shocked, he thought, "Wei Yu? She's my schoolmate?" When he accidentally glanced at the book she was reading, his eyes widened. My enhanced eyesight really doesn't help sometimes. Last time, there were 18 handsome men in her book. Now there are 38. The number has increased exponentially. Who knew the eldest lady's heart was so unrestrained? Curious, Li Shulai grabbed a book and sat beside her. He peeked at Wei Yu's book, observing the complicated relationships between the characters. For a while, he sat quietly, stealing glances at her, but Wei Yu didn't notice him. Meanwhile, at Zhang Ming's table, Zhang Ming waited and waited. Frustrated, he thought, why hasn't Li Shulai come back yet? Did he run away? He stood up to look for him and spotted Li Shulai sitting next to Wei Yu, staring at her. Dumbfounded, Zhang Ming muttered, "What about me? Have you forgotten I'm here? You came to the library to help me with my thesis, not to pick up girls." He sighed and thought, "I'm a bachelor. I'll study on my own. Whether I pass or not, it's my fate." Back at Wei Yu's table, after finishing her reading, Wei Yu noticed Li Shulai sitting beside her. Embarrassed, she thought, when did he sit here? Why is he next to me? What should I say? Awkwardly, she said, "Hello, Mr. Li. What a coincidence." Li Shulai smiled and replied, "Hello, what a coincidence indeed." Wei Yu, blushing, thought, this is how greetings go, right? Just like in novels. He's so kind and polite. Li Shulai asked, "Classmate, did you borrow this book from the library?" Wei Yu nodded. "Yes, it's a book about the history of the Song dynasty. It's on the bookshelf at G11. Li Shulai smiled. "Oh, I see. I'm here today to help a classmate with their graduation project, but I'll definitely check it out when I have time." Wei Yu blushed again, thinking, he's so nice. Why is he so perfect? Li Shulai turned to Wei Yu and asked, Student Wei Yu, your graduation thesis should have passed, right? Blushing, Wei Yu nodded. Yes, my graduation thesis passed. Upon hearing this, Li Shulai asked, What do you plan to do after graduation? Wei Yu hesitated for a moment before responding, Haven't thought about it yet. My dad said, I don't need to worry about these things and should just do what I like. Li Shulai observed her trembling hands and the slight shake of the book she held, thinking, as expected of the young lady, she's so nervous her hands are shaking along with the book. Could she be scared? Suddenly, Wei Yu asked nervously, Do you want to chat with me? Last time, when you accompanied me to the toilet, I thought you were a good person, so I'll try my best to keep the conversation going. Li Shulai, slightly amused, replied, You don't need to force yourself to come up with something to talk about. Wei Yu blushed and said, Oh, then I'll just keep reading. Li Shulai sighed inwardly. Still the ultimate social phobia. She can't even chat about simple topics. But then Wei Yu surprised him by asking, Do you like reading? Without hesitation, Li Shulai answered, I guess I do like it. Encouraged, Wei Yu asked, Have you heard of a new and cutting-edge author named Liao Kexin? She's from our schoolmate. Li Shulai was taken aback, thinking, What a magical bond this is. Teacher Liao, you've turned a socially anxious person into a chatterbox. This must be the power of living literature. Even Wei Yu is taking the initiative to bring up a topic. Wei Yu continued, I've read several of her short stories. Li Shulai, careful not to overwhelm her, thought, Take it slow. Be subtle. Don't scare the socially anxious lady. Wei Yu then asked, Which of Liao Kexin's works do you like best? Li Shulai confidently replied, Actually, I like all of them, but if I had to choose, my favorite would be her debut work, Tide. Hearing this, Wei Yu's eyes filled with tears, and she began crying. Alarmed, Li Shulai asked, What's wrong? Are you okay? He thought, No way. Her emotions are like a storm, so sudden and intense. What should I do? Unfortunately, I don't have a handkerchief or tissue. Through her tears, Wei Yu explained, You are my soulmate, and you are also Teacher Liao's soulmate. You're the first person around me who thinks Tide is good. Li Shulai was surprised and thought, Is it worth crying over? Wei Yu continued, So many people, so many of my so-called friends who read Tide told me they didn't understand it, or that it wasn't good. They know how much I love it, yet they still criticize it. Blushing, she looked at Li Shulai with soft eyes and asked, Will you be my friend? She raised her pinky, making a pinky promise gesture. Li Shulai smiled and hooked her pinky with his, saying, Of course I will, my dear lady. It's rare to find a true friend in life, and it's even better when that friend is like-minded. In his mind, he thought, the eldest daughter is truly adorable, even making pinky promises like a child. She looks so cute, doing something so innocent. Wei Yu beamed with happiness and said, Okay, thumbs up stamp. Seeing her joyful expression, Li Shulai decided the moment was right. Actually, Teacher Liao and I are good friends. If we're ever free, the three of us could have a meal together. Wei Yu's eyes widened in delight. Really? She asked. Li Shulai smiled. Of course, we made a promise to stick together for 100 years without lying. Overwhelmed with joy, Wei Yu hugged Li Shulai tightly without thinking, and declared, I officially announce, from now on, you are my best friend, no one else. Blushing, Li Shulai tried to calm her down. Miss Wei Yu, we're in the library. You're hugging me too tightly. Realizing what she'd done, Wei Yu pulled back quickly, her face as red as a cherry. Looking into his eyes, she stammered, Ask you to come over sometime? Li Shulai hesitated for a moment, but eventually smiled and said, Of course. Flustered, Wei Yu quickly turned her head away, embarrassed by how close she had gotten to him. Later that evening, Li Shulai returned to the university dormitory, where Jiang Ming was waiting for him. As he opened the door and stepped inside, he thought, I always feel like I've forgotten something. Jiang Ming, sitting on the bed, looked up and asked, Brother Xu, what time is it? Hearing Jiang Ming's voice, Li Shulai froze. I forgot about my old friend, he realized, remembering his promise to help Jiang Ming with his graduation thesis. Jiang Ming smiled knowingly and said, For your happiness, I can sit on the bench, I can fail the exam, and I have no regrets. Li Shulai quickly apologized. I'm so sorry, Jiang Ming. Tomorrow, I promise I'll help you write your paper. Something unexpected happened today. Jiang Ming gave him a pointed look. Unexpected? You mean you forgot your principles for the sake of beauty? What's up with that girl today? Feeling guilty, Li Shulai hesitated. Jiang Ming, feigning bitterness, sighed. Bro, You've been quite lucky with the ladies lately. First Xiaoning, then Liao Kixin, and now that white-haired girl today. He grinned mischievously and added, Come on, tell me the truth. It's the least you can do to make up for my emotional damage. Li Shulai sighed and began explaining everything to Zhang Ming. The next day at the university cafeteria, Li Shulai brought Liao Kixin to meet Wei Yu. Wei Yu, nervous and fidgeting, struggled to start a conversation with Liao Kixin. Li Shulai noticed her anxiety and thought, the young lady's social phobia is acting up again. To break the awkward silence, he said, Wei Yu wants your autograph, Teacher Liao. Please sign something for her. Liao Kixin smiled warmly at Wei Yu and asked, No problem. Where should I sign? Gaining some courage, Wei Yu replied, Anywhere you want, Teacher Liao. I even brought a few magazines you published. You can sign those. She hesitated for a moment, then joked nervously, Here is fine too, as she gestured at her clothing. Liao Kixin blushed slightly, thinking, That's unnecessary. She quickly changed the topic by suggesting they order some food. The three enjoyed their meal together, and Wei Yu, who usually struggled with social interactions, found herself genuinely happy. Turning to Liao Kixin, she asked, Teacher Liao, would you like to visit my home? I've bought every issue of your magazine. I've filled 3 large bookshelves with them. Liao Kixin, surprised, thought, 3 bookshelves? But I've only published a few works. Wei Yu continued enthusiastically. I bought at least 100 copies of each issue. It's a pity your earlier works are out of print. I couldn't collect many of them, but I've asked my dad to help me find them. Li Shulai, listening from the side, thought to himself, she truly is a wealthy young lady. After finishing their meal, they began walking back toward the dormitories. Liao Kixin suddenly stopped and said, I need to head to the publishing house, so I'll leave now. You two can continue chatting. Wei Yu's eyes sparkled as she asked, Teacher Liao, should I call a taxi to take you there? Liao Kixin waved her off with a smile. No need. I'll get there myself. But if you ever want sample issues in the future, just let me know. I'll sign each one and bring them to you. There's no need to buy so many copies. Wei Yu's face lit up with happiness. Teacher Liao is so kind and gentle. Is this what a privilege feels like? She thought. Li Shulai, watching Wei Yu's reaction, mused, She's even crazier than I was when I met my idol. Before leaving, Liao Kixin said, Take care, Wei Yu. Let's meet again soon. With a big smile, Wei Yu replied, Take care, Teacher Liao. After Liao Kixin left, Wei Yu turned to Li Shulai and said, Thank you for introducing me to Teacher Liao. Now I have a best friend. Li Shulai smiled at her and thought, I promised you I'd be your best friend, and I meant it. But Teacher Liao truly is amazing. She managed to bring out the social butterfly in you. Now that she's gone, you're already stuttering again. Noticing his silence, Wei Yu said, If you ever need help in the future, I'll do my best to help you. Li Shulai smiled warmly. We'll talk about the future later. He thought to himself, I gained another wave of favorability from the young lady. This is what I'd call an accidental achievement. July 1999, graduation day. The students gathered to take their graduation photos, marking the end of an era. Teacher Guo called Li Shulai over and handed him a graduation photo. Looking at it, Li Shulai thought, After my rebirth, I've experienced college graduation once again. But this time, everything is different. He smiled, reflecting, In this life, Teacher Guo didn't meet the tragic end he did in my previous life. This rebirth was worth it. Glancing at Teacher Guo's happy expression, he thought, If you survive a great disaster, fortune will surely follow. I hope he has a smooth life from here on. Suddenly, Teacher Guo called out to him, Li Shulai, come here. Li Shulai quickly approached, and Teacher Guo said, When you're out there, make your way forward. If you need help, feel free to come to me. Li Shulai smiled warmly. It will definitely be a great experience. Teacher Guo, you too, take care of yourself. Seeing Li Shulai's expression, Teacher Guo couldn't help but feel a bit worried. You don't need to worry about me anymore, he said. Li Shulai hesitated before replying. Teacher Guo is a rare good person, so of course I'm worried. For decades in my last life, I often thought about you. He then said seriously, Life is full of ups and downs, but you'll always bounce back after hitting rock bottom. No matter how hard it gets, don't ever give up. Persevere, and you'll eventually see the bright moon. He paused, thinking, I remember hearing this in a TV series 5 years later. Teacher Guo looked at him with a faint smile. You've graduated. You're no longer a student, but a member of society, yet you dare to lecture your teacher. Li Shulai scratched his head apologetically. I was wrong. However, Teacher Guo thought to himself. Others might see these as mere cliches, but Li Shulai's words touched my heart. There was a time I truly believed I couldn't move forward. I almost gave up, but fortunately, I had good students like him. He then said to Li Shulai, "Life is not always smooth sailing. You're still young and have many opportunities ahead. Even if you stumble, as long as you work hard, you'll rise again." Li Shulai nodded firmly. "I will do my best, Teacher Guo." Elsewhere on campus, Zhang Ming approached Li Shulai with a big grin. "Brother Xu, thanks to your intensive tutoring, I passed my graduation defense. It feels so good. I owe you a big meal later." Li Shulai chuckled. "You don't have to treat me to a big meal, but you must stop fooling around and help your dad with his work." Zhang Ming nodded confidently. "Of course I will. But honestly, I don't know when we'll all gather in the dormitory again. Let's make a pact. Old classmates in Hangzhou will meet for a small gathering every 6 months, and everyone will gather for a big reunion every 3 years. His eyes welled up as he continued. "We used to have a bond where we could always rely on each other. Now, we'll be scattered across the world. I'm not ready for this." He lunged forward as if to hug Li Shulai, who quickly stopped him. "Enough. Communication tools and transportation are getting more advanced. We can meet whenever we want. Now wipe your nose," Li Shulai added. "Focus on your future. You already have what it takes to succeed. As for me, I have my life plan and will move forward step by step." Zhang Ming, surprised by his serious tone, teased, "Brother Xu, why are you looking at me like that? Are you going to confess your love to me? Has this day finally come? Though I can't bear to part with you, I'm not ready to sacrifice myself for you." Li Shulai sighed in frustration. "Why didn't I notice how weird he was in my last life?" He kicked Zhang Ming's backside and shouted, "Get out!" Zhang Ming lay on the ground, pretending to cry. Li Shulai shook his head and said, "I wish you a bright future, great success, and endless achievements." He thought, "I too must run forward. In the future, I'll continue to help Zhang Ming's family overcome challenges." Zhang Ming, moved, asked, "Why are you being so sentimental? You're going to make me cry." He extended his hand for a handshake. "Brother Xu, I also wish you great success and a promising future." Li Shulai shook his hand firmly and replied, "Work together. Let's move mountains if we must."